Definitely feel hope for the future. And I think, one of the reasons why I was keen to come and talk to you was because sometimes when I talk about having MS, I will receive messages from people who have recently been diagnosed or they're in that early stage. And I know for me that was the worst bit.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Wired for Hope. I'm Dr. Jess, a clinical psychologist, university lecturer, and published author. On Wired for Hope, we talk about all things brain injury, cognition, and mental health. If you like this episode, you can like and subscribe, and you can also follow me on Instagram at Dr. Jess Neuropsych or at Wired for Hope podcast. Without further ado, please enjoy the episode today. So you're here today to talk to us about your lived experience of receiving a diagnosis of MS.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
You're really welcome.
And we were meeting before today to have a little bit of a think about the shape of the podcast, and some of the things that we want to touch on is your personal journey and how the experience was for you about receiving that diagnosis, and to kind of journey back to that time. And we also really wanted to think about the female perspective, with regards to kind of MS and maybe some of the unique challenges that women might face. And then have a think also about mental health and keeping well and meaning and purpose whilst living alongside MS.
Perfect. Sounds good.
And the way that Lucy and I got in touch is because on LinkedIn I saw a letter that Lucy had written to her younger self, and it was really moving. And that's sort of how we got talking and got in contact. And I wondered, Lucy, if you might read it for us today, just to start us off.
I'm really happy to. So this is a letter to 31-year-old me. You've just found out that you've probably got multiple sclerosis, and it feels like your life has been flipped upside down. It's Lucy from 2025 here, and I'm here to tell you that it's going to be okay. More than okay, actually. Yes, you do have MS. It will take 3 more years to actually get it officially diagnosed, but don't worry, there's plenty of hope. You're desperately anxious right now. You've got double vision, so you can't see your laptop properly. You're wondering if you're even going to still be able to go to work. And such extreme fatigue that you're not able to go out with your friends and rave at the egg until 6 a.m. like you used to. But having MS is going to teach you that you can still do hard things and you can still have fun. In fact, having MS is going to challenge you to realize that you're capable of much more than you ever imagined. You're going to find this hard to believe as you currently struggle to do a 5K around Victoria Park, but you're going to run the London Marathon 3 times at least. And twice of those times will be during a global pandemic, but don't worry about that now. Having MS is going to give you more empathy for the millions of disabled people, and you're going to understand that most people acquire their disability during life rather than being born with it. You'll feel inspired to raise money for charity, especially for the brilliant MS UK charity who will help you come to terms with having MS in the coming weeks. You'll learn that there is so much innovation in MS treatments, and thanks to all the wonderful people working in neurology, in MS charities, and in pharmaceutical companies, there'll be plenty more treatment options in the future too, and hopefully a cure one day as well. You're worried if you'll be able to work, have kids, and achieve all the things you want to in life, but you will. And having MS is going to give you a bigger focus to make a difference with your life and be grateful for the health that you do have every day. So take a breath. You're going to find mindfulness a real help. Don't blame yourself and realize that it will all work out okay. With love, Lucy.
Oh, so lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
I had forgotten the detail about 3 marathons.
Yes.
I thought it was 1. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's Lucy from the future writing. So I ran twice. I've run twice already, and the third one is to come in 2026.
Okay.
And so I'm currently in training for the London Marathon at the moment.
Gosh.
But I ran it twice in the pandemic, as I said in the letter, and both times virtually because we weren't able to run on the streets of London, of course, because it was all locked down.
Oh my
so
gosh.
It was quite an experience in itself. But I'm very much looking forward to next year when it's going to be the traditional, genuine London Marathon experience.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So you ran it solo, basically, without
Solo.
crowd support.
Yeah, solo.
That
Through some
sounds
rural
atrocious.
fields. It was tough. It was tough. But actually, the first time I really enjoyed it because it was a beautiful day. The second time it was torrential rain for the entire day. My socks were wet. There was no one outside cheering me on at all. It was pretty miserable. But yeah, I was extremely happy to have done it at the end of it.
And so you're running for a MS charity this year?
An MS charity, yeah. They're called MS UK.
Okay.
And they actually offer counselling support to people they offer a whole load of things. But the way I came across them was they offer counselling support to people that are going through the early stages of diagnosis and, well, all stages really. But that's when I first accessed their phone lines and talked to them about, what does this mean for my life? How do I possibly make a decision about medication? That sort of thing. Okay,
gosh. Yeah, that's amazing to have that counseling around the time of diagnosis. And it has me thinking, actually, I'm wondering perhaps if we start there and we kind of go back in time to when you were 31, was it when you received the diagnosis?
It wasn't when I was diagnosed, no. So 31 was when I first had the symptoms. It was when the whole journey kind of started. As I'm sure you know, it takes a really long time to get diagnosed. I think that's coming down now, but for me it was 3 years until I got the diagnosis. So the beginning of the journey was, it happened very suddenly. I remember it very, very well. I was walking home. I'd been out for dinner with work friends after work. Had a late night, been out for a nice meal. I had some wine. I was walking home and suddenly I looked to my right and the traffic was double. And I was just like, what is going on? Like, this is really unusual. Am I just exhausted? Have I been working too hard? Have I had too much wine? Kind of hoping and praying that I'll just sleep it off and I'll be fine in the morning. But then I woke up the next morning and my vision was still double and I knew this isn't normal. And then really extreme headaches accompanied that double vision and started to really worry. I mean, I started to worry. I actually went to work that day and I was due to get on a plane to Edinburgh and carry out some interviews for work. So
oh my gosh.
I did that. I kind of just thought, crack on, carry on as normal. But obviously as the headaches got worse and I couldn't really see my laptop screen properly, ended up having to go. I went first, I think, to the GP. I went to the optician. I wear contact lenses. They were wondering, is there a problem with my eyesight? Couldn't really get a clear answer. Eventually the GP referred to a neurologist. And that's how I kind of started on that journey of realizing that it might be something to do with MS. The neurologist had me taken for an MRI scan. That was a whole process in itself. And then it was quite a few months later that I found myself getting the results of that first MRI scan.
Yeah.
And that was kind of when I think probably the words MS was said out loud, maybe for the first time.
Right.
It still wasn't a diagnosis at that point. And I remember him saying, it could be a virus that's affected your brain. It could be this, it could be that. So it was kind of, it could be MS, but it wasn't definitive at that point.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember I mentioned to you, it was a particularly traumatic memory of mine was seeing that brain scan for the first time because like most people, I had never seen the inside of my brain. And so to be suddenly kind of faced with it in a very sudden way. And I mean, unfortunately, that first neurologist didn't have a whole load of empathy for the situation that day and kind of slapped down the brain scan because it was back in the day when they kind of physically printed it. And I remember just seeing these big blotches of white in my brain and thinking, oh my God, he's going to tell me I've got a brain tumor or like there's something horrifically wrong with me. And I can't even really remember what he said next because I basically fainted in his office. And so, that was pretty tough. Like first being faced with like, what is actually going on with me. But when I left that meeting, I was told, I think, that it was an indication that it could be MS, but not definitely MS. And you could take medication, but, still not a confirmed diagnosis.
Yeah.
So I felt very confused at that point, very overwhelmed with all this information, very anxious. It was, definitely a difficult time.
Yeah. That sounds really difficult. I as you're speaking, I'm sort of, this new memory has come to my mind and I'm thinking back to when I was a student and I was shadowing a neurologist and I watched him give probably 6 really tough diagnoses in one day. And I just remember kind of my eyes being focused on the patient and just kind of, yeah, like feeling so curious about what they're experiencing and
Yeah.
also so anxious for them, I think. If
Definitely.
that's,
It's really
yeah.
fascinating because I guess when I look back, I'm like, for him, the 15-minute appointment is probably very much part and the parcel of his normal day. Like nothing out of the ordinary for him, maybe, to be delivering this type of news. But for me, it's a life-changing moment. You know, if you were to make a movie of my life, that would 100% be a key scene.
Yeah.
Watching me faint and be so horrified about these results and so on. And I think, you know, if we're thinking about providing hope for patients, like what would be so lovely would be to receive that information with a whole lot more kind of personal understanding and empathy. And I think, unfortunately, that was missing a little bit in those first interactions. But I will say, like, over the course of my now 11 years experiencing MS, I've had some much more positive experiences as well. So that's been good. I mean, I've had like 4 different neurologists, different nursing teams and things supporting as well. And the team that I currently have, especially my MS nurse, is so empathetic, so understanding. I can sort of pick up the phone to her or WhatsApp her at any point and be like, hey, I've got this symptom, a little bit worried about this. And she'll always make time. Which I think is, that's what you need really as a patient, especially when there is so much anxiety going alongside the physical symptoms. And actually for me, probably because I'm physically very well, that anxiety and the mental health aspect of MS has always probably been the worst part. Even when I've had periods of double vision, I've had that twice. It's lasted for a couple of weeks and then it's thankfully like gone back to normal. But the panic attacks, the anxiety, the sleepless nights that goes alongside that, because you're always worrying, like, is it going to go away? Is it just a temporary symptom, or is this it now? Like, am I, you know, will I be able to drive my car again? Will I be able to work? All of the worry that comes alongside the physical symptom is kind of, for me, it's 10 times worse than the actual physical symptoms itself. So to have a medical team who can offer reassurance and just kind of give you some time actually, and not make you feel like you're wasting their time or that they haven't really got time in their day for you. That makes such a huge difference.
I guess going back to that diagnosis, when we spoke before, you shared that you had almost kind of like imagery come to your mind about what the future could look like at that time. And I just wondered if you could share some of those reflections, what that imagery was and what you've learned since, and how you see things now.
I love that you've asked that, actually. It's such a good question, because I think I didn't know much about MS before my experiences. But one thing I shared with you was that some of the stuff I did know was through the media. So actually, when I think about TV programs, films, books, like whenever people are portrayed as having MS, is a bit of a bugbear of mine. It's always a really serious, like they're always like, you know, they've got a very serious level of progression of the disease, or they're really struggling with aspects of life. It's normally a very negative picture that's painted. And it always really bothers me when I'm watching a movie and I'm like, oh, this poor character who looks in pain and they're struggling and they can't do X, Y, Z. I'm thinking, God, I bet they're going to have MS. And then inevitably it ends up that that's how the media have chosen to portray MS. And I think because of that, that was my association. I was like, oh, this is what the disease looks like. I'm, you know, and it really focuses your mind on, oh, I'm not going to be able to do various things in the future, whether it's I'm not going to be able to run, I'm not going to be able to walk, I'm not going to be able to swallow, I'm not going to be able to talk, like all of these kind of more extreme, I guess, variations of the disease. And there is an accuracy to that, right? They know that MS does cause some of those things, but there's also, I just think that not much hope in the version that the media often portray. And therefore my mind kind of went to quite a negative outcome. And I think I was left feeling almost like pre-grieving something that hadn't happened, like worrying about, am I going to be able to walk? Am I going to be able to think clearly, and so on? Before there was even any indication that that was what was going to happen to me.
What your
my kind of version of it was. Like, and that's the other thing with MS, of course, there are like so many different versions and different types of experiences. So for somebody that will be their real experience, but not necessarily so. And I think something that someone said to me that was more helpful along the way was, if you're going to get MS, this is a good time to get it. And I remember thinking, what a strange thing to say, but there's some truth in it, in the last, I guess, even in the last 10, 11 years that I've been experiencing MS, the progression in terms of like treatment options has been amazing.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier, there's like now there's a big load of research going into prevention of MS.
Yeah.
And the drugs, I mean, the medication that I'm on now wasn't on offer 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so much positive change that's happening. That's, and I do feel hopeful for that. I mean, we haven't got a cure yet, but I probably even expect that there will be one within my lifetime. And that does give me a lot of hope for my own situation, for others who have MS, for my children as well. Like, to think, I know they have a slightly higher likelihood of getting this than others. But if they do, there's a whole lot of hope in terms of treatment. And, hopefully they can see through the way that I'm living my life that it's not stopped me.
Yeah.
It's not stopped me to do the things that I want to do. And, in some ways it's enabled me to do other things. So it's not all doom and gloom, actually. And I find it disappointing when the media portray it as purely doom and gloom and a very kind of negative perception.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm thinking about kind of models, psychological models of disability as you're speaking. And for example, one of the things that we think a lot about in terms of working with people with dementia diagnosis, where the cognitive changes or behavioral changes, is that the impact of disability can be hugely varied based on things that one can get set up kind of in their day-to-day life, like different compensatory strategies that you can use, or different technologies, the reception by loved ones and community, and how much they know about that particular kind of constellation of difficulties, etc. I guess what I'm hearing from you is it's so varied in terms of how MS can express itself, but also in terms of disability and impact and
I think you're totally right. And I think having this is one of the positive things. It's helped me to understand much more about broader disability and how well as a society we've kind of enabled disabled people to feel included, which, in many ways the society hasn't done a good enough job at that. And actually I kind of really consciously decided to talk publicly about having MS, especially in the workplace. So, when I was in like a big corporate role, I decided, to kind of very publicly be part of the disability network and to talk about my experiences of having a disability and working a full-time job, because again, the perception might be that that's not possible, but it's very much possible. And there's plenty of disabled people that are in senior positions and in full-time work or part-time work and so on. And I think there's a real need to tell those positive stories, to partly to kind of help people that are newly diagnosed, because we know that, a lot of people acquire disability during their life, partly to kind of give them hope that, actually my life's not going to completely turn upside down, and there is hope that I can still carry on working and do the things that I need to do. But also to kind of change that perception in broader society.
Yeah.
Because I think, maybe what I've said about MS having a bit of a negative perception in the media, maybe that's true of broader disability as well. If we think about how disability is often portrayed in the media, it can be quite negative as well. But there's plenty of disabled people that are, out there achieving things, working, et cetera. So why do we not share more of those positive stories as well? It's kind of, that's one of my reflections.
Yeah. And one of the kind of things that, speaking of stories that need to be shared, that we were talking about is specifically thinking about the experience of being a woman and receiving this diagnosis.
Yep.
And we were thinking about how, kind of in your 20s and 30s, that's when most MS diagnoses are made.
Yeah.
And then there's a question of fertility and childbearing. And I was really interested in what your experience was of that.
I can pick on some experiences, I think parts of my experiences that are particularly relevant for being a woman, that made things more difficult. One, I was reflecting on this last night with my husband. The very first time I went to have a MRI scan. Now, you can't have an MRI scan if you're pregnant. And I was at that time trying to get pregnant. So when they said, is there any chance that you can be pregnant? I said, oh, maybe, like I'm trying to get pregnant, but I don't know. And then they basically kind of were very dismissive and like, oh, well, you can't have this scan then because we need to like definitively know that you're not pregnant. And then there was a whole thing about, you know, can you take a pregnancy test? Well, it's not the right time of the month to take a pregnancy test. And it was basically really frustrating for everyone involved because I think I wanted the scan because I wanted to know what was going on. They wanted to scan me because you know how it is with the system. They've put you in for a scan. They want to scan you. And I was just like, I can't be the only person that this has ever happened to. Like, there's, you know, looking back, you're just like, this is extremely frustrating. And you're standing there in your pants and your silly gown, being told like, you know, and feeling like it's your fault that you can't have your scans. Like, this is extremely frustrating. So that was one example. Another was when in that first meeting, when I was shown the brain scan, and then the doctor tried to run through medication options with me, which was a whole nother thing because I was not in my head mentally prepared to really consider medication options at that time anyway. But he ran through these different options. They present the side effects that come along with the different percentages of efficacy and so on. And as a patient who's completely overwhelmed and new to this, you're supposed to decide which treatment you want to go on to. And then he asked me this question around like, you know, do you want to have children? Are you planning to have children? And I said, yeah, we're trying to get pregnant. And then he said, oh, well, none of them, can't have any of them then, because at that time, it was 2014, the NHS didn't consider any medication to be safe during pregnancy. And that's actually changed because I've got 3 children. In my more recent pregnancy, I stayed on medication throughout. So there is now, I think only one still, I could have that wrong, but there's one or a small number of medication that you can now continue during pregnancy. But you're also, I guess, like as a woman, you're told like, oh, you really should go on medication as soon as possible to manage this condition. But equally, you can't if you want to have a baby. So you're then having to, I guess, weigh up that into your decision making. Now I was sure that I wanted to have children, so it wasn't a huge point in my decision. But I guess depending on someone's symptoms, that may weigh more heavily on the way they make a decision.
And tell me about this medication as well, the injection, because that's not created with women in mind.
No, definitely not. So that was a whole thing for me actually, to start injecting myself 3 times a week, because I hate injections. I'm someone that has always steered well away from needles. I haven't even got my ears pierced. Like, this is the level for which I hate needles. So when I finally started medication, and I was 3 years on no medication at the beginning, because I was trying to get pregnant and then had twins and was breastfeeding and so on. So it was 3 years in when I started medication. And the one, after kind of going through all the pros and cons of the different options, the one that I chose is called Copaxone. And it was delivered by injection 3 times, self-inject at home. And I was extremely nervous about doing this. But thanks to like an extremely patient and very kind MS nurse who must have sat with me for about an hour to help me inject that first one. They won't let you leave until you've injected the first one. And I think I just kind of sat there freaking out and really worried about it. And she was like, you just got to do it. Otherwise I can't let you go. Like, you can't leave with the medication unless you can show me that you can do it. And I kept sort of saying, can't you just let my husband do it? She was like, no, you've got to be able to do it yourself. Anyway, so you can just do it, like with the needle, you can just do it yourself. But obviously then you have to look at a needle, or they offer you this injector pen, which is this like very clever little device where you put the needle in, screw it up, and then you basically press a button and it injects you. And so this was an essential piece of my kit, because I cannot look at the needle. And if I used this, I could kind of like, look the other way, press the button, and it would all be all right. But the ridiculous thing is that this piece of kit has obviously been designed with a man's hand in mind, because it barely fit my hand. I had to stretch between like my little finger and my thumb to the absolute maximum, and then I could only just about put pressure on the end point to be able to actually do it. And I'd often like have to kind of use the other hand, and it's difficult because sometimes you're injecting into your bum, or like, you know, you're having to
change location.
position. Yeah. So it's not easy at all, but it's just like another one of these points of like a lack of inclusive design, I guess, where you've got a disease where most of the people that experience it are women, and yet they've designed the piece of kit around a man's hand. It's just, it's ridiculous, really. But yeah, so it was like another point where I was kind of like, oh, women don't feel well represented here. But yeah.
Gosh. And you had a journey with medications, right?
When I came out of that early meeting, the one where he first put the brain scan down, I had this massive drive that I was going to get in control of it.
Yeah.
And I changed my lifestyle completely as well. Like I was like, I almost felt like I will do anything to get over this disease. Like, and so the needle thing, as much as I hated needles, I knew that I'd get over it. Like I was just like, I'll have to get over it. Like, and the self-injector did really help because it meant that you didn't have to actually see the needle. And that, that did kind of help me. But I would have tried anything. That in that first weekend after that appointment, I gave up, I think gluten, dairy, meat, sugar, alcohol. Like I just like quit a whole load of things overnight because I was like, I will try anything that might help make me feel normal again. Because alongside the double vision, I'd also been having this extreme fatigue. And that was probably one of the worst things because it just stopped me from doing the things that I considered normal. Like, you know, could just about go to work, but I hardly had any energy. You know, I was missing out on friends' birthdays. I missed my best friend's hen do. I missed weddings. Like I was all these kind of aspects of life. Remember, I was 31, so it's kind of that period of your life when there's a lot going on, and especially like there's lots of weddings and hen dos, and I just felt like parts of my life were kind of going by, and I was missing out. So I think that's what kind of gave me this drive to think, what can I do? Like, how can I get on top of this? How can I start to feel normal again? And actually those things did really help. And I don't know whether it was, you know, whether it was the cutting out of the dairy or whatever, or whether it was the kind of psychological feeling that I'm in control now. Or maybe it was a combination, I don't know. But like, for whatever reason, it helped me kind of feel better.
And you mentioned actually that the sort of mental health side of things has been, a prominent part of your journey. And I was wondering how you've coped over the years and what's helped you. I'm curious about talking therapy, but I'm also curious about any other kind of therapies or lifestyle changes or community-based things that have been helpful to you. Over that time.
Yeah, for sure. So you're probably getting a picture that the worst part for me was at the beginning.
Okay.
And I think the biggest kind of mental health piece to overcome was that coming to terms with a potential diagnosis and then ultimately the actual diagnosis, and all of these feelings in my head that were like, how is life going to change? Will I be able to still do X, Y, Z? That was kind of my recurring internal monologue that I was almost having to kind of like fight against a little bit. The things that helped me the most. So in those first, so the double vision was in March. I think that appointment with the doctor was in August. The worst part was those first few months when I was having the kind of really extreme fatigue, and I was having panic attacks alongside that. And I think that was kind of, I couldn't leave my house because I was kind of so stressed out and anxious about it all. And then really good friend, one of my best friends, suggested this mindfulness course, and it was amazing. I do really credit that with like helping to turn things around. It was in person, I think it was an 8-week course, and it was my first kind of introduction to mindfulness and meditation. And I remember going to this course. It was in central London, and we would literally lie on the floor for like 45 minutes and do these like long body scan exercises and stuff. But I was totally new to it. I'd never done it before. And I just thought, this is amazing. Like, I kind of felt that quietness in my mind for the first time for ages. And it massively helped with overcoming the panic attacks. And I then found like meditation. I then like had meditation apps and Headspace and all those things. Like I then started to do meditation regularly. Like I started to do it every day. I think at that point I was like waking up, doing 45 minutes body scan exercises and that sort of thing, just to kind of be able to like move through the day. So it was hugely important to me to begin with. And then over time, like as I became, more confidently back to kind of my normal self, I then got into running, which obviously, now I find myself training for the London Marathon, and I got into running. And I think I see running actually as another form of meditation. I love running in nature, like especially running outside is really important to me. And I'm like, just to be out in the fresh air, like it's just something really nice and freeing about that. And I found that really helpful. I've also really enjoyed the whole way through this journey. I've really enjoyed creativity. Often find myself painting. I think again, it's like maybe another form of meditation in terms of like you're so into the painting and into the picture that you haven't got time for your head to be worrying and all of that sort of thing. Now, I think if you fast forward to like kind of current day, I'm really well, like touch wood, like physically really well. That my current medication is managing the symptoms very, very well. My energy levels are good. Like I'm kind of pretty much back to the health I had before all of this. So that in itself is really positive. But I also, do have those moments where I worry about the future, or if I get a slight tinge of an MS symptom, I might be like, oh gosh, is this a relapse? It's on your mind maybe a lot. It's on my mind a lot maybe. And so I do still do things to manage from a mental health perspective. Like I say, running's really big. Reading is something that I've really got into recently. I think, again, it's like a kind of form of escapism. I'm really conscious. This may sound weird, but maybe people can relate to this. It's I like to only consume like positive stuff. So in terms of like the TV that I watch, movies that I watch, books that I read, I try and keep it light. Like, so I don't, really steer far away from all those Netflix serial killer documentaries. Like I will not be watching any of that. Like I'm reading like lighthearted beach reads, romance novels, like just things that I'm just like, I don't need more worries and anxiety in my brain. So I'm quite conscious about it actually, that I like try and kind of keep it light. And sometimes that means watching like trashy TV or whatever, but like if it's a form of, and also of course like socializing, because I've always been like a really social person and quite outgoing. So I think that was why I was anxious in the early days that, I can't go out clubbing, I can't see my friends and so on. But I am very social. So now, now I'm 42, I'm like less likely to be clubbing sadly, but I will definitely always make time to like have coffee with friends and like, just to be around people. Because I think I've read a lot actually about both MS and disability, I think more broadly, like actually a lot of people some of the negative side of it is suffering with like loneliness and feeling like cut off from people. So I think it's so important to keep those connections there. And it means a great deal to me to like be able to spend time with friends or family and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's so interesting hearing you talk about the importance of sort of managing anxiety through mindfulness, for example. And in the brain injury space, sort of my favorite therapy, the therapy that I use most kind of in the neuro space is something called acceptance and commitment therapy.
Okay.
And it's what's called a third wave CBT approach, which basically means that we still believe that what we think and what we do affects how we feel. So that's sort of like a cognitive behavioral therapy approach. But instead of trying to augment our thoughts or change them, we recognize that sometimes they're realistic. So for example, after you have a diagnosis of a neurological illness, for example, life has changed. And some things are harder because the world isn't set up to be very accommodating to people with cognitive change or difference. So there is, a reality, a difficult reality to bear. So instead of kind of changing thoughts, which is what often happens in CBT, we use mindfulness approaches.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I love acceptance and commitment therapy, and I also practice a lot of mindfulness myself. So it's really interesting to hear for you that a mindfulness-based approach has been so nourishing and so helpful in terms of kind of, being in touch with your body and your mind. And it sounds like also in a way finding purpose through painting and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. That reminds me actually, because when I was doing that mindfulness course, there were some people on it who had like chronic pain. And I remember the lady kind of saying, you're just kind of accepting your pain, and you're breathing into your pain and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I hear her voice in my head when I have a relapse, or sometimes I have, you have a flare up of old symptoms. So for me, like I've had some weakness in my right leg before, that's an old symptom. But sometimes when you've had, like I've had the flu jab recently, and that's because it's a live vaccine, it can bring back an old symptom. So I had a couple of days where I had like cramp in my leg, and I was lying in bed doing kind of body scan and just like breathing into my foot and feeling like, it's cramping, but like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, kind of just like, as you say, like you kind of almost like accepted it and found peace with it.
Yes.
And it's weird, but I kind of also, the funny thing about MS, especially, so my variant, if you like, of MS is like relapsing remitting. So for now, the symptoms come and go. And I have to remind myself they're going to go. And now that's not always the case in more progressive form of MS, but even though I know that they're probably going to go, I always worry like, oh, how long is this going to be here, you know? And so to try and remain in the present moment, it can be tricky, because part of you wants to wish it away and be in the future where it's gone.
Yeah.
But then the other part of me is kind of like, I want to make the most of every day, and this day isn't ruined by the fact that I've got cramp in my leg, if you know what I mean. So it's like breathe into it, accept it, but then also kind of recognize that it's not stopping me from walking. It's still perfectly powerful. If it's just a bit annoying, or I'm just kind of noticing that it's there in a mindfulness way, you know, noticing it, but it's not a big deal, and I'm just going to move on with it. So I think mindfulness has maybe helped me to find peace with some of the symptoms of MS, or even some of my worries about MS, like kind of become more at peace with it.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that's great about mindfulness is the encouragement to be here, present in the current moment. And I think, you know, there's a couple of things at play there. Like one is that sometimes I want to rush through the symptoms to get to the point where I'm symptom free. The other part, which is definitely the stronger part, is I think having anything like a big kind of life-altering thing, a big condition, a big health condition or a health scare or whatever, for me at least, it gave this like real heightened sense of purpose and awareness of your own like fragility as a human. Like, you know how like, and maybe this is another thing about the age in which a lot of people are diagnosed. Like I lived a lot of my younger life, like 20 up until 20s, like almost with no eye on the fact that we're not immortal. Like you kind of live like you're going to live forever, and there's no, like, so carefree that there's no thought towards any like human fragility or any sense that I might one day become disabled or I might one day die. And MS, I guess, brought that all very clearly into the vision. And it was a wake-up call in a sense, but that might sound a bit morbid, but it was positive, because it kind of was really I don't know, it kind of sharpened this sense in me that I've got to make the most of every day. I've got to make the most of every opportunity. And maybe that's why it's kind of, you know, even if you think about it, like doing the marathon, which may seem silly, but it's like, I never thought I could do that before. And I wouldn't have put myself out there to do it if it hadn't been for the fact that I suddenly believed that I could. And then I realized I could run it for an MS charity. And I was like, yes, like this is all coming together. This is what I want to do. I can achieve this. And I think even, you know, in a workspace, like my career now is very much focused on helping people to find meaning and purpose in their life and in their work. And I think that feels like something that is really important to me, and something that I'm kind of, you know, I don't want to waste away my life on doing stuff that I don't want to do. Like I try. So MS has definitely, you know, it's not like I would have asked for MS, but there's some positive things that have come from it, for sure.
And to sharpen those into focus.
To sharpen, and I think it makes you really grateful for the health that you have got, right? ultimately there are worse things out there than having MS. And now I'm so conscious about my health, I really, really try and look after it. So, from a mental health perspective, like we've spoken about, but also just generally from staying healthy, like, taking supplements or generally eating a healthy diet, trying to do exercise. Like, I'm very conscious about keeping my body as healthy as I can because I want to avoid the MS impact. And we know from the data that people who are obese, people who smoke and so on, like they're going to have worse MS outcomes. So it's also it's a reason to stay healthy. So it's another kind of positive thing that's maybe come out of it. So I think mindfulness is a good mental attitude from that perspective of like it kind of helps you to be grateful for what, to accept what isn't so great, but also to be grateful for what is good.
And perhaps this is a bit of a hard question to answer.
Oh, go on.
But for you, what are the 3 things in your life that give you most meaning and purpose?
Oh my gosh, what a good question. Well, I have to have my family up there, I guess, as number one. I mean, my children, my husband, my family, like they're definitely a huge sense of purpose. And actually, we were saying to you earlier, like they're often the reason that I would always get out of bed. Like on a bad day, whether it's a symptoms bad day or if I was feeling down, I'm always going to get out of bed to look after my kids and all the rest of it. It's a very literal, and I think a great thing about purpose, like having a personal sense of purpose, is feeling needed. And like as a parent, as a mum, like you feel very needed. So that definitely has to be up there. My kind of broader sense of purpose in the world, like the legacy, I think a lot about like the legacy that I want to create. And I'm really conscious that I want to, in the broader sense, leave this world better like than had I not been here. So leave a positive impact. Specifically, the way that I'm trying to tackle that is often through like identifying injustices and trying to tackle injustices or inequality in the systems, things like the badly designed injector pen and so on. Like I'm very interested in opportunities to make disadvantaged or marginalized groups feel more included. And so a lot of my work has been in that space, whether in a kind of financial inclusion sense or in a corporate purpose sense. Like a lot of the things that I've been doing have hopefully been helping people that have been in whatever way marginalized or underserved by society traditionally. Creativity, probably I'd say is the third one. I feel like at heart I'm a very creative person, so I love to like draw, read, paint, anything that is a bit of a creative outlook. So have conversations like this. I mean, I think this is a form of creativity, isn't it, to kind of share ideas with the world. So
and actually there was a poem that came to my mind and I wondered if I could read it.
Oh, please do.
Yes. It's one of my favorite poems, and I personally, when I read it, I feel like it speaks to the present moment focus and the simple things.
Love that.
I read it at my grandmother's funeral actually. And it's called The Orange. And my cousins and we wore orange and it was really sweet. It's called The Orange by Wendy Cope. Is it okay for me to read it?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, please.
At lunchtime, I bought a huge orange. The size of it made us all laugh. I peeled it and shared it with Robert and Dave. They got quarters and I had a half. And that orange, it made me so happy, as ordinary things often do, just lately. The shopping, a walk in the park, this is peace and contentment. It's new. The rest of the day was quite easy. I did all the jobs on my list and enjoyed them and had some time over. I love you. I'm glad I exist.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful.
Isn't it lovely?
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I think it's such an important message of like just happiness and in simplicity and like you say in the small things. So nice.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming today and sharing your story and being part of this interview. It's so wonderful to have you here and hear about your life experience. And yeah, so amazing to also think with a woman about what this is like and
Yeah.
some of the considerations. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Kind of
really
from your
welcome. Well,
perspective.
yeah.
So what's next for you? What does the future hold?
For me personally, good question. I think I want to continue to think about this idea of legacy and like what's the impact that I want to leave on this planet, and how I can kind of be the most positive role model for my children, for my family, and how I can kind of not measure, but how I can really think about like, the next stage of life and what meaningful impact I can put out there in the world. I guess from an MS perspective, like it's very unknown. And that's something that's always in the back of my mind in terms of like, will I always be as well as I am today, or not? I think I've made peace with the idea that I might not be as well as I am today. I made peace with that, but also balanced with an enormous amount of hope for all of the medical advancements that are going on. And, we talked about the new medications that are coming out all the time and the research and so on. So I hold a lot of hope that there will probably be a cure in my lifetime, or at least more effective medications in my lifetime. And hopefully that will mean that I stay well for longer. But if I don't, then I also kind of, have made peace that I'll be okay in whatever version that looks like. I think one thing that's on my mind as a parent is like the slightly increased likelihood that my children might get MS and what that could look like. And I think that's also an important reason why I kind of can role model and show my children that, yes, I've got MS, but it's not stopping me from doing things that I like doing or that are fun or that are interesting. And therefore, hopefully, if they do end up faced with a diagnosis one day, it won't be that big shock to the system that it was to me. And hopefully I'll be able to provide, a level of like empathy and understanding and compassion to help them through that. But equally there'll be, there's all this brilliant stuff going on about prevention of MS and maybe they'll benefit from all of that. But I think hopefully what they'll see from my experience with this is whatever might impact them in life, whether it's a MS or some other medical condition or something else big that might happen to them, as things do happen in life. I think that approach that we've kind of talked about, the way that we handle it mentally, like the way that we kind of accept and make peace with whatever it is, but also try and find the positives, is probably a good way to approach into any sort of big thing that might happen to them in life. So yeah. Yeah, I feel hope for the future. Definitely feel hope for the future, and I think one of the reasons why I was keen to come and talk to you was because sometimes when I talk about having MS, I will receive messages from people who have recently been diagnosed or they're in that early stage, and I know for me that was the worst bit, and I want to give them a hope that if anyone is kind of feeling that at that low point of, oh gosh, how's this going to turn my life upside down, or will I be able to do X, Y, Z? I just kind of want to be an example to them that like, it's going to be fine. It's all going to be fine. And like, here I am 11 years on, like really well, like totally physically able to do everything that I could before, no longer tired. The medication's working well. I'm at peace with myself. Like, I just think it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. And I want to kind of shift that negative perception.
Thinking about people who might be listening to this might have recently received a diagnosis of MS or be living with a diagnosis of MS. Do you have any kind of particular resources or charities that you've found helpful that you would wish for me to link in this podcast?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, MS UK is the one that I mentioned, where I accessed the counselling support in the early days, and their resources are really good. There's some other big MS charities who have some good information on their websites, especially when it comes to choosing medication, and that's quite another really big decision point in the journey. And there's so many medication options now. I think the MS Trust and MS Society websites both have good, trustworthy information on there that might help people to make a decision. And then one of my doctors along the way, he's not my current doctor, but he was brilliant and a really positive experience working with him, Professor G, he's called. He writes a blog called MS Selfie, which helps people to manage their MS condition themselves. And that's brilliant, actually, because he was the type of doctor that would give me lots of time and really take space to do really thorough checkup and ask the right types of questions. And really just always felt like he had time for me, which I think is such a key skill.
Yeah.
As I say, unfortunately, he retired from his practice, but he writes a blog and I read it really religiously.
Okay.
So you might want to link that as well.
We'll link
I think
the blog for
that's a good one.
sure. Yeah. So MS UK and Professor G.
Yeah, they're probably the main ones for me.
Stand out too.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like leaving people with the sense that you have time for them and that seems to be like the most kind of important number one thing that as clinicians we need to make sure that we're doing.
I think so, and just
more than the technical bits.
Yeah, and not to like write people off. Like, this seems funny, but not funny, haha. But like, I remember when it almost felt like some people were dismissive of patients that weren't on medication. So in those first 3 years, and I wasn't on medication, I remember thinking that some medical professionals were kind of judging me about that. It was like, she's made the wrong call type thing. And there was obviously like a big element around the pregnancy piece and that sort of thing, why I'd made that decision. But I was also quite risk adverse and worried about the side effects of the medication. And I think, again, it's like just making time to listen to your patient and appreciate, which sounds very obvious, but appreciate that they're not on the same level as you with the knowledge of the acronyms and the medical knowledge. And so it's really hard to digest, like, oh, here's like some analysis or whatever. And even just to be able to interpret that in kind of layman's language and make time for questions that may seem like silly questions will go a long way, I think, in building trust and empathy with the patient. And if that's there, then I think the whole journey will be so much more positive for everyone involved, rather than it feeling like, you can't ask your question in case it seems like a silly question, whatever it might be.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
You're
we
welcome.
might have some clinicians listening, so always try and get some feedback for us. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Wired for Hope today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this episode, you can like, subscribe, and follow, or follow me on Instagram at Dr. Jess Neuropsych or at Wired for Hope Podcast. If you want to hear more about my personal reflections or the context for the interview, head over to where you get your audio-only podcasts, such as on Apple, and I'll share a little bit more about the context for the video and who the speakers are in those episodes. Please note that this is not a substitute for direct psychological advice or support, and you can check out the podcast notes for a list of services in the UK to support you with your mental health or after brain injury. All right, thanks everyone. Bye.